The alien court was filled with noise. Tall pillars of black stone rose into the high ceiling, and banners of the queen's house waved in the air. Hundreds of aliens gathered, their glowing eyes focused on one thing: the strange human standing in the middle of the hall. He looked small compared to the towering guards, but his calm face carried something unusual. The queen sat on her throne, covered in golden armor. Her crown shined like fire under the torches. Her lips curved into a cruel smile as she raised her hand. The noise of the crowd fell silent instantly. Everyone feared her voice, her judgment, and her orders. This human, the queen said, pointing at him with her long claw, dared to walk into my lands, as if he is more than dirt. Claims humans are strong, clever, and worthy of respect. Today we will show him what humiliation truly means. The aliens cheered and clapped, their voices shaking the hall. Some shouted curses at the human. Others laughed, calling him weak, calling him food, calling him nothing. The human did not move. He only stared back at the queen with steady eyes. The queen leaned forward. "Bring my champion," she ordered. From behind the throne, heavy footsteps echoed. The ground shook with each step. A warrior appeared, taller than 3 humans combined, his muscles wrapped in iron armor, his face marked with scars from many battles. The crowd roared in excitement. This was the queen's greatest warrior, undefeated in duels, feared across the land. His name alone made enemies tremble. The warrior slammed his weapon against the floor, sparks flying. His deep voice thundered across the chamber. "My queen, shall I crush him slowly or finish it quickly?" The queen laughed, her voice sharp. "Crush him slowly. I want the people to remember this moment. I want them to see what happens when a human stands against us." The warrior turned to the human. He smirked, his fangs glinting in the torchlight. "You should kneel now. Save yourself from pain. You were nothing before me." Still, the human remained calm. He did not bow. He did not step back. Instead, he lifted his chin slightly and said in a clear voice, "If you want me to kneel, make me." Gasps filled the court. The alien nobles whispered in disbelief. How dare a small human speak with such boldness? The queen's smile widened. Pleased with the arrogance she believed would soon be destroyed, the warrior growled and pointed his weapon at the human. "Your bones will break like glass. Your screams will echo through this hall." But the human's eyes never left him. His calmness unsettled many in the crowd. Some aliens frowned, confused. Why was he not afraid? Why did he look like he had a secret? The queen waved her hand and the floor of the hall shifted. Walls moved back, forming a large battle arena. The alien court turned into a place of blood and challenge. The crowd rushed to the edges, hungry to watch. The warrior stepped inside first, stomping the ground. The human followed slowly, without fear. His simple clothes, his lack of armor, made him look fragile. But his steps were steady, his breathing controlled. "Bow to your betters," the queen shouted from above, "or suffer." The human raised his voice so all could hear. "I will never bow to tyranny." Silence swept across the hall for a brief moment. Then the aliens erupted in laughter. To them, his words were meaningless, just empty sounds before death. But something in those words stayed in their hearts like a thorn. The queen's champion rolled his shoulders, preparing for the fight. His weapon glowed, sharp and deadly. He roared, shaking the pillars, as if announcing the human's end. Human stood ready, empty-handed, but his eyes were sharp, his mind focused. He had fought before, not battles of strength, but battles of survival. He had learned that size did not always win, and arrogance was a heavy weakness. The queen leaned back in her throne, satisfied. She imagined the human broken on the ground, begging for mercy, but the human had no plans of begging. He came here for a reason, and this challenge was only the beginning. The tension rose like a storm. The crowd shouted, the warriors snarled, and the queen's cruel smile promised humiliation. Yet in that heavy silence before the first strike, many felt something strange and unease, a whisper of doubt. For the first time they wondered, what if the human was not as weak as he looked? And so the challenge began. Asterisk the crowd's laughter. still echoed as the queen's warrior stepped forward. His massive frame filled the arena like a mountain of iron. Sparks fell from his weapon as he dragged it across the stone floor. Every alien in the hall leaned closer, ready to watch the human crushed like an insect. The queen raised her hand. "Begin," she commanded. The warrior roared and charged. His footsteps boomed like thunder. The ground shook beneath him. His weapon came down with enough force to split a tree in half, but the human was not there. He had moved so fast that many in the crowd blinked in shock. Dust rose where the weapon struck, cracking the stone. The warrior looked down, confused. The human was already behind him, standing calmly as if nothing had happened. The crowd gasped. The queen narrowed her eyes. She expected fear, trembling, and a broken human. But instead, she saw quickness, confidence, and control. The warrior snarled, "We're fast. God, but you cannot run forever." He swung again, wide and heavy, the sound of his weapon cutting the air like a storm. The human ducked, rolled, and avoided the blow. His movements were not wild. Every step was careful, every dodge perfectly timed. The aliens in the stands began to murmur. "How is he still standing?" whispered one. "Why doesn't he fight back?" asked another. The queen tapped her claw against her throne. She wanted blood, not games. "Stop playing with him," she shouted. "End it." The warrior growled louder, anger boiling inside him. He was used to enemies falling after the first strike. But this fragile human, this weak creature, refused to fall. Worse, he made the warrior look slow. Again, the warrior attacked, smashing stone, tearing dust into the air. The human darted left, then right, his eyes always locked on the warrior's movements. He studied him, step by step, like a hunter waiting for the right moment. At last, the human spoke, his voice calm in the chaos. "You're strong, too strong for your own good." The warrior bared his fangs. "What did you say?" The human's eyes narrowed. "You rely on power alone. That is your weakness." The words cut deeper than any blade. The crowd silenced for a breath, shocked that a human dared to insult the queen's champion. The queen's lips twitched with fury, but curiosity glimmered. In her eyes, the warrior's face burned with rage. He swung wildly, trying to crush the human under sheer force. Each strike echoed like thunder, but none found their target. The human moved like water, bending, flowing, slipping past every blow. Then, in a flash, the human acted. Stepped forward instead of back. The warrior's weapon missed, leaving his chest open. The human struck not with a blade, but with his fist aimed at a precise point under the warrior's ribs. The sound was sharp, not loud. The warrior staggered, shocked more than hurt. The crowd gasped again. Did the human just land a hit? The warrior touched his chest where the blow landed. It did not break his armor, did not wound him deeply, but it made him stumble. That alone was enough to silence the mocking laughter of the crowd. For the first time, Champion looked uncertain. The human stepped back, calm as ever. Strength is nothing without control. The queen's golden eyes burned with anger. Her plan to humiliate the human was failing. Instead, the human was turning the fight into a lesson one her people were forced to watch. The warrior roared. Humiliated. He raised his weapon high and unleashed a strike with all his might. The arena floor shattered, dust flying into the air, blinding everyone. When the dust cleared, the crowd searched for the human, and there he was, standing on the warrior's back, balanced and steady, his calm face staring at the queen herself. The entire hall froze. The human's voice echoed through the silence. "You wanted a show? Here it is." Gasps and whispers filled the court. The queen's warrior, her pride. Her champion was being used as a platform by a human. The queen's smile disappeared. Her claws tightened on the armrest of her throne. This was no longer entertainment. This was insult. The duel was far from over. The warrior still had his strength, still had his rage. But now, everyone knew the truth. The human was not prey, was a predator in disguise, and the fight had only just begun. The arena floor was cracked and broken. Dust still hung in the air like smoke after a battle. The alien warrior panted, his chest heaving, his eyes glowing with fury. He had never been humiliated like this. A human, small, unarmed, fragile, stood, tall against him, even daring to climb on his back. The queen leaned forward on her throne. Her golden claws dug into the armrest. What was happening before her eyes was not the scene she had planned. The human should have been lying in blood by now. Instead, her court was whispering in shock. She could feel doubt spreading through her people like fire. The warrior growled, his deep voice echoing, "Enough games, I will crush you." He swung. His weapon again, faster this time, aiming not just with power but with desperation. Sparks burst from the floor as steel met stone. The human moved aside with ease, his body flowing like water. Each dodge was perfect, as if he had already seen the attack before it came. The alien nobles leaned closer, their whispers sharp. "Is this luck or skill?" one asked. Another muttered, "No one has ever dodged him so many times." The human's breathing was steady, his eyes calm. But inside, his mind was sharp as a blade. He had spent his life fighting in ways the aliens could never understand. While they worshipped brute strength, humans had learned something else: adaptability. A human could turn weakness into strength, fear into courage, and desperation into victory. The warrior struck again. The human stepped closer, almost too close, slipping under the swing. His hand pressed against the warrior's arm at a strange angle. The alien roared in pain. It was not a powerful strike, but a precise one hitting. A nerve hidden under thick skin. The crowd gasped. The warrior dropped his weapon for a moment, shaking his arm. His eyes widened. He could not believe it. He was hurt by a bare-handed human. The queen's lips curled in anger. "Fight properly," she shouted at her warrior. "Destroy him now." The warrior's pride burned hotter than his queen's. Command. He lunged with both hands, trying to grab the human. His claws closed around empty air as the human spun away. In that spin, the human struck again, this time at the back of the knee. The warrior collapsed onto one leg, roar echoing like thunder. The court froze. Their champion, their pride, was kneeling. Not in respect, but in pain. The human did not smile. He did not taunt. He simply stood in silence, his eyes locked on his opponent. "You fight like a beast," the human said calmly, "but you forget every beast has a weakness." The warrior's rage boiled over. He lifted his weapon again, swinging with blind anger. His strikes tore apart the stone floor, sending shards flying. But blind anger made him slower, weaker. The human slipped between the cracks of fury, never touched, always one step ahead. And then it happened. The human stopped dodging. The crowd gasped. The warrior's weapon came down, fast and deadly. But the human raised his arm and caught it not with raw strength, but with perfect timing, redirecting the weapon's force into the ground. The impact shook the arena, but the human stood firm, his hand pressed against the weapon's shaft. Gasps and shouts filled the court. "Impossible. He's holding it." The warrior's eyes widened. For the first time, he felt fear. His greatest weapon, the tool of his victories, had been neutralized by one small human. The human's voice cut through the noise. "Power is nothing without control, and control, something humans mastered long ago." The queen's fury turned to unease. Her golden eyes narrowed as she studied the human. This was no ordinary fighter. There was something else, something dangerous hidden inside him. The warrior pulled back, breathing heavily, sweat dripping down his scarred face. He circled the human, no longer mocking, no longer smiling. The human stood still, ready, waiting. The crowd, once loud with laughter, was silent now. Every eye was locked on the human. Every heart pounded with the same question: what is he? The human raised his hand slowly and clenched it into a fist. His knuckles cracked, the sound echoing across the arena. "I don't fight to entertain you," he said, his voice low but sharp. "I fight to show you the truth." The warrior roared and charged, his weapon glowing with deadly energy. The human's eyes flashed with focus. At the very last second, he moved not back, not aside, but forward. A strike landed, not heavy, not wide, just precise. The warrior's body froze. His weapon fell from his hands, clanging against the stone. His breath caught in his throat. His massive frame swayed as if the earth itself had betrayed him. The human had struck a point so precise, so hidden, that even the warrior himself did not know it was vulnerable. The arena fell into silence. The queen gripped her throne so tightly. Her claws left marks. Her plan was shattering before her eyes. The human stood tall, his chest rising with calm breaths. He had not revealed his full strength, not yet. But everyone now understood one terrifying truth. This human was no weak creature. He carried a hidden power, one that even the queen could not control. And this duel was far from over. The arena floor was cracked and covered in dust. The warrior, once feared across kingdoms, was now breathing heavily, his massive chest rising. And falling like a drum, his weapon lay discarded on the ground, useless after the human's precise strikes. The crowd stared in silence, their earlier laughter long forgotten. The queen's golden eyes blazed with fury. She had promised her people a show of dominance, a spectacle of humiliation. But now, her champion, her pride, looked shaken, its confidence bleeding away with every second. The human, by contrast, stood calm and steady. His clothes were torn, sweat lined his forehead, but his eyes burned with quiet determination. He had not shouted, he had not mocked, and he had not faltered. That silence was more terrifying than any roar. The warrior growled, his voice deep and angry. "You think you've won? You think a few tricks make you strong?" He picked up his weapon again with trembling hands. "I am the queen's blade. I am the strength of this empire." The crowd cheered weakly, trying to reignite his pride. But even their voices carried doubt. The human tilted his head slightly, his tone calm. "Strength alone is not victory. You don't fight for yourself, you fight as a tool. That's why you will fall." The words struck deeper than the blows. The warrior roared in rage and lunged forward with renewed fury. He swung his weapon with all the force left in his body. Sparks erupted as stone shattered. This time the human didn't dodge. Gasps filled the air. The warrior's weapon came, down fast, deadly, unstoppable. But at the last heartbeat, the human stepped inside the strike. The weapon whooshed past his side, barely missing. And before anyone could blink, he struck. His fist slammed into the warrior's jaw. The sound echoed like thunder. The warrior stumbled back, stunned. The crowd screamed in shock. The human didn't stop. His movements became sharper, faster, like lightning cutting through a storm. He struck pressure points with precision, each blow small but devastating. The warrior roared in pain, his body faltering with every hit. For the first time, the champion looked mortal. The queen rose from her throne, her armor clinking, her voice sharp. "Fight harder. Show this worm who you are." But her words did not give him strength. They exposed his weakness. He was not fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting to cover her pride. The human saw it. He stepped back, breathing evenly, and said loudly enough for the court to hear, "Look at him. Your champion bleeds. Not for honor, not for victory, but for a queen who hides behind him." The court erupted in whispers. Nobles shifted uncomfortably. For centuries, they had feared the queen and worshipped her warriors. But today, one human was tearing down the illusion with simple words. The warrior roared again, refusing to yield. He lifted his weapon for one final, desperate strike. His muscles bulged, his veins throbbed. He poured every last bit of strength into one blow meant to end everything. The queen's lips curved into a cruel smile. Yes, finish him. The arena shook as the warrior charged. The air itself seemed to split, but the human's eyes were calm. His breathing slowed. At the last moment, when the weapon descended with all the power of a storm, the human moved with perfect timing. He stepped aside, guiding the weapon past him with a touch. The force of the strike carried the warrior forward, off balance, wide open. The human twisted, his body low, and drove his fist into the warrior's chest right. Where the armor was weakest, the sound was sharp and final. The warrior staggered. Gasping, his weapon fell again, clattering against stone. His massive frame trembled, then collapsed to his knees. Dust rose around him as the hall fell into stunned silence. The queen's cruel smile froze. Her eyes widened in disbelief. Her champion, her strongest warrior, was kneeling before a human. The human stood before him, steady as ever. He did not finish him. He did not strike again. He simply raised his voice for all to hear. Strength without wisdom leads to defeat. You wanted to humiliate me, but in truth, you humiliated yourself. Your power blinded you. And now your empire has seen the truth. The court was dead silent. Every alien, from noble to guard, stared in shock. The human had not only defeated the warrior, he had turned the fight into a lesson. The warrior groaned. His pride shattered more than his body. He'd been forced down, not by brute force, but by a mind sharper than any blade. The queen stood, slowly, her golden crown gleaming under the torchlight. Fury burned in her voice. This duel is not over. But the court knew it was. They had witnessed the impossible. A human had broken their champion, not with weapons, not with size, but with hidden power and strategy. And in that moment, one thing became clear. The queen's punishment would not be the human's humiliation, it would be her own. Asterisk, the warrior's knees struck the stone floor with a heavy crack. His weapon lay abandoned, his chest heaving, his pride shattered. The once mighty champion of the queen looked smaller now, like a fallen statue no one dared to raise again. The court remained silent.
Ow.
The crowd that had once laughed and mocked. The human could not find their voices. Whispers trembled through the air, as if the people feared that even words would anger the queen. The queen's face twisted with rage. Her golden crown shimmered under the torchlight, but her power suddenly felt fragile. Her plan had been simple: humiliate the human, prove her empire's dominance. But instead, her greatest warrior knelt in defeat before the one she called dirt. "Stand," she screamed, her voice echoing across the hall. "You will not kneel to this creature. Stand and crush him." The warrior tried. His arms trembled as he pressed against the floor, trying to rise. His breath came out in painful gasps. He lifted his head, eyes full of shame, but his body betrayed him. No matter how hard he tried, his strength was gone. The human stepped closer. His movements were slow, deliberate, not rushed. He did not look like a man desperate to finish his enemy. He looked like a teacher walking toward a stubborn student. The warrior's fangs bared weakly. "Finish it, human. End me now." But the human shook his head. No, the word cut deeper than any blade. The warrior's eyes widened. The queen herself leaned forward, shocked. The human's voice was calm but sharp. "Killing you proves nothing. We're already defeated, and worse, you are broken." The silence of the hall grew heavier. Even the torches seemed to burn quieter, as if they, too, were listening. The queen slammed her claw against the throne. Sparks flew as metal hit stone. "He is not broken. He is my champion. Cannot lose to a human." The human raised his head and looked directly at her. His eyes were steady, unafraid. "Then open your eyes." "He already has." The queen froze, her lips curling back in fury. Around her, the nobles shifted nervously. They had never seen anyone speak to their queen like that, yet no one could deny the truth. The warrior was kneeling. The human was standing. The human turned back to his fallen opponent. He knelt just enough to meet the warrior's eyes. "You fought with power," he said softly, "but no purpose. That is why you fell." The warrior's chest rose and fell. Heavily, his pride burned, but his body refused to rise. At last, his voice cracked with bitter defeat. "Then you have won." The words rolled across the arena like thunder. Gasps erupted from the crowd. Never before had the queen's champion admitted defeat, let alone to a human. The queen's claws tore small grooves into her throne as she gripped it tightly. Her plan had reversed completely. The humiliation she had prepared for the human had turned back upon her. Her champion was not only beaten but humbled before the entire court. The human stood again, his calm gaze never breaking. He raised his hand and pointed not to the warrior, but to the queen. "This was never about me," he said, his voice carrying across the stunned hall. "This was about you. You wanted to show your people power. Instead, they have seen truth. Your strength is borrowed, your pride is fragile, and your throne rests on the backs of others. When they fall, you will too." The nobles whispered louder now. Doubt spread like a sickness, impossible to stop. The queen's golden eyes darted. Between them, her fury fighting against the crack of fear in her heart, she shouted desperately, "This duel is not finished. I declare it void." But even her words sounded hollow. The law of her people was clear. A duel witnessed by the court could not be undone. Victory belonged to the last one standing, and the last one standing was the human, the warrior still. On his knees, lowered his head. His voice was rough with shame. "By our law, I am yours." The hall gasped as one. Every alien turned to the queen, waiting for her reaction. Her crown shook slightly as her rage boiled over. She wanted to deny it, to erase it, to tear the human apart with her own hands. But the law was absolute. The punishment for the defeated warrior was binding, and in that moment, the queen realized the cruelty of fate. She had ordered her champion to humiliate the human. But by the law she herself upheld, the punishment for the warrior's loss was not death. It was marriage. The queen's lips trembled with fury. The entire court could see her pride shatter before their eyes. The human stood tall, silent, while the crowd buzzed with disbelief. He had not only defeated their champion, he had changed the destiny of the queen's house. The humiliation was complete, but the story was far from over. The air inside the grand court was heavy, almost suffocating. The queen still sat on her throne, but her golden crown no longer looked like a symbol of power. It looked like a chain tightening around her head. Her champion knelt in shame, his voice still echoing in the minds of all. "By our law, I am yours." The law was absolute. Everyone in the chamber knew it. No queen, no emperor, no high priest could overturn it. The punishment for defeat in the sacred duel was clear submission through marriage. The queen tried to rise above it. With her voice, she slammed her claw against her throne, sparks bursting into the air. "This is madness. He is not one of us. He is no warrior. He is an intruder." But her words no longer carried the same weight. The nobles who once bowed their heads now exchanged uncertain glances. The crowd that once cheered her commands now whispered doubts. The law was the very foundation of their society. If she broke it, her throne itself would crumble. The human stood silent, watching her with calm eyes. His very silence made her anger burn hotter. She wanted to scream, to tear him apart. But the truth pressed down heavier than any weapon. She had no choice. The high voice of the court, an ancient elder with silver skin and deep eyes, stepped forward. His staff struck the stone floor. Sound carried across the silent hall. "By law," he said slowly, "the defeated warrior belongs to the victor. The queen's champion has fallen. The human stands. The law demands union." Gasps filled the chamber, even though they all knew the truth. Hearing it spoken aloud struck their hearts with thunder. The queen's claws scraped against the throne, leaving deep marks. Her jaw tightened until it trembled. "You dare bind my warrior to this creature?" She spat. The elder's voice remained calm, unshaken by her fury. "I do not bind him, my queen. The law does. The law is above even the throne." The queen's fury turned into something worse, fear. Her own words from years past echoed in her mind. She had been the one to remind her. People countless. Times that the law was eternal, unbreakable. Now that same law had betrayed her, turning her plan into her punishment. The human finally spoke. His voice calm, steady, but sharp enough to pierce the silence. "You wanted me humiliated. Instead, your warrior stands bound to me. Do not blame the law. Blame your pride." The queen's golden eyes burned as she glared at him. For a moment, the court thought she might leap from her throne and strike him herself. But deep down, she knew if she broke the sacred rule, she would lose everything. Her people would turn against her. The warrior still knelt, his head bowed. He did not resist. Silence was louder than the queen's screams. The nobles began to murmur again. Some hid their faces, but others stared openly at the queen with something dangerous in their eyes. Doubt. The elder raised his staff once more. Then it is decided. By the binding of law, the queen's warrior is wed to the human victor. Words fell like a hammer. The court gasped. The queen clenched her fists until blood dripped from her claws. Marriage, the very punishment she had designed to shame. Her enemies had now been forced upon her house. Her champion, once her pride, was now tied to the very human she had sought to destroy. The queen rose slowly from her throne, her body trembling with restrained rage. Her voice cracked like lightning. This is not victory. This is corruption. You human, you think you have won, but you do not understand what you have done. The human's expression did not change. I understand enough, he said simply. The court watched, breathless. The queen, the most feared ruler in the land, had been forced to bow to the very rules she had sworn to uphold. And in that moment, her humiliation was complete. But the punishment did not end there, for the law demanded more than words. The union had to be sealed before the eyes of the people. The ceremony of binding would take place immediately. The elder raised his staff. Prepare the rite. Servants rushed forward, their movements quick but fearful. They laid out the sacred chains, glowing with ancient power. These chains were not just symbols, they were bonds that marked the defeated forever tied to the victor. The queen's warrior did not resist, as the chains were wrapped around his arms, linking him to the human. The glow spread, sealing the bond. The court gasped as the final link locked into place. The queen's humiliation was now eternal. The human stood, chains heavy on his arm, but his gaze steady. He had not sought this marriage, but it was now his, and the queen, no matter how furious, could not break it. The chamber shook with whispers. The mighty had fallen. The weak had risen. The order of the world had been turned upside down. The queen sank back onto her throne, her crown tilted, her pride broken. Her punishment was not death, nor exile. It was worse. She had been forced to give away her strongest warrior to the one she despised most. The court would remember this day forever. The day their queen's arrogance chained her own house to a human, and in the silence that followed, one truth remained unshakable. This was only the beginning. The glow of the sacred chains faded slowly, leaving behind only silence. Every alien in the hall stared at the human and the warrior, now bound together by law. The punishment had been carried out. The queen's pride had been torn apart. But for the human, this was not victory, it was something far stranger. The warrior, once fierce and unshakable, now stood beside him. Her head was bowed, her claws curled into fists. She did not resist the chains, yet her breathing was heavy with shame. For years she had been the symbol of strength, the terror of her enemies. Now she was chained to a man she had once been ordered to destroy. The queen's golden eyes burned with fire. She had been silent for too long, and her voice finally cut through the hall like a blade. This union means nothing, she hissed. He may have the law, but he will never have loyalty. My warrior will despise him until her last breath. The human turned calmly to the queen. Maybe, or maybe not. Time reveals more than threats ever will, the nobles whispered again. They had seen the unthinkable, a human speak to their queen, as an equal, without fear. The whispers grew bolder now, no longer hidden. Doubt had infected the court, and doubt was more dangerous than any sword. The elder stepped forward. It is done, he said firmly. The bond is sealed. The warrior belongs to him now. The court bears witness. The queen slammed her claw on the throne once more, but no one moved. No soldiers rushed forward. No nobles supported her cry. She was alone, surrounded by her own laws. The warrior finally lifted her head. Her eyes met the human's, and for the first time since the duel, there was no rage in them, only confusion. She expected him to mock her, to pull the chains, to celebrate his victory. Instead, he spoke softly, almost gently. "I didn't want this," the human said. "But I will not treat you as a trophy. You are not my prisoner. We are my partner." Now, whether you like it or not, the warrior blinked, stunned. No one had ever spoken to her like that. All her life, she had been seen as a weapon, a blade in the queen's hand. But this human, he was treating her as something more. The crowd murmured louder. This was not how victors behaved. This was something different, something dangerous. The queen rose to her feet, her crown trembling with her fury. "This is an outrage? You dare speak of partnership? She belongs to you because she lost. That is all." The human's eyes turned to her, sharp as steel. "No, she belongs to herself. The law may bind her to me, but respect will keep her beside me." The words struck the court like lightning. The nobles gasped. Even the elders' eyes widened. Respect. The concept was foreign to a people who only knew power and dominance. The warrior's lips parted slightly, but no words came. Something heavy moved in her chest, something she had never felt before. The queen's fury boiled into desperation. She pointed her claw at the human. "You will regret this. You think you have won, but you have invited your own destruction." The human didn't flinch. "Maybe, but if destruction comes, I will face it just as I faced your warrior, and I will face it with her at my side." The warrior's eyes widened again. His words felt unreal. He had fought her, defeated her, humiliated her, yet he did not treat her as broken. He treated her as equal. The court was silent, listening, learning. The queen, for the first time in her reign, looked powerless. The elder struck his staff to the ground. The bond stands. The duel is ended. Law is fulfilled. This gathering is dismissed. The crowd slowly began to move, their whispers echoing through the hall. They did not leave mocking the human. They left questioning their queen as the court emptied. The queen sat frozen on her throne, her crown heavy, her heart burning with hatred. She had tried to humiliate a human, and instead, her own reign had been humiliated. The warrior stood still, her arm chained to the human's. She finally spoke, her voice low. "You should hate me. You should drag me like a dog. That is what others would do." The human looked at her calmly. "I don't need to hate you, and I don't need to drag you. You are more than what your queen made you." For the first time, her sharp eyes softened. A strange warmth flickered, where only pride and fury had lived before. She did not answer, but she also did not pull away. The chains glowed faintly, a reminder of the law that had bound them. But to the warrior, they no longer felt only like punishment. They felt like the beginning of something she could not yet understand. And to the human, it was not a chain at all. It was proof that even in the heart of an alien empire, one man could change everything, not with size, not with weapons, but with courage, wisdom, and respect. The duel was over. The punishment was sealed. But their story had only just begun.